Halloween is the perfect excuse to stay up way too late watching something that will make you double check the locks and question that creak in the hallway. I'm KG, this is Watch This Instead, and today we're diving into some of the most binge-worthy scary series you can stream right now. And because there are just too many great ones to fit into a single list, this is part 1, part 2 drops next week, so make sure you're subscribed and ready for more. Let's jump right in.
And time on a silver table. Is my jaw wired shut?
Let's kick things off with the show that redefined what modern horror on television could be, The Haunting of Hill House. The Haunting of Hill House isn't just scary, it's devastating, moving and beautifully crafted in a way that only Mike Flanagan could pull off. And if you've been here before, you already know I'm a massive Flanagan fan, and this won't be the only time his name comes up on the list. Based loosely on Shirley Jackson's classic novel, the series follows the Crane family, a group of siblings still haunted, in every sense of the word, by the time they spent in Hill House as children. What starts as a ghost story slowly becomes something far more personal, a meditation on grief, trauma, and the ghosts we carry with us long after we leave the haunted place behind. The cast is phenomenal across the board. Carla Gugino, Michael Huisman, Henry Thomas, and Victoria Pedretti all bring something heartbreakingly human to the horror. What makes Hill House special isn't just how it scares you, but how it stays with you. The ghosts aren't there to jump out, they're part of the wallpaper, the background, the memories. You might not even notice them until you can't unsee them. Visually, it's stunning. Long unbroken takes, muted tones, and that signature Flanagan blend of quiet dread and emotional honesty. It's horror that makes you feel something deep before it makes you scream. If you somehow missed this one, fix that immediately. It's one of the best horror series ever made and a perfect way to start your Halloween binge.
Cette chose me suit dans mes cauchemars depuis mon enfance.
Quelle chose?
Marianne.
C'est une sorcière.
Next on the list is Marianne, which is a French horror series that's one of the most terrifying shows on Netflix, and one that far too many people have missed. It follows Emma Larsimon, a successful horror novelist who discovers that the witch she's been writing about for years, Marianne, might not be fiction at all. When Emma returns to her hometown, everything starts to unravel. The lines between what's real and what's imagined collapse completely, and the series leans into that confusion until you feel it too. Victoire Dubois is incredible in the lead. Brittle, self-destructive, but also strangely magnetic. Her fear feels real, and it anchors a story that could easily have gone off the rails. The rest of the cast adds to that feeling of a small town rotting from the inside. Friends who seem familiar until they start doing things that make your skin crawl. What makes Marianne so effective is its pacing and atmosphere. It's not afraid of silence or of stillness. Every frame feels like something awful could happen, and when it does, it's both shocking and inevitable. It's folklore horror done right, grounded, cruel, and quietly tragic. And like the best ghost stories, it's also about guilt. About what happens when you stop running from the thing that's been chasing you your whole life. If you thought Hill House was unsettling, Marianne will make you wish you hadn't turned the lights off.
Terry murdered a child. Everything he does after that is like he's begging us to catch him. What kind of criminal does that?
Some horrors begin with the unexplainable. Others start with something that seems perfectly ordinary, a murder, an investigation, and then twist reality until you're not sure which way is up. The Outsider does exactly that. Based on Stephen King's novel, the series begins with a brutal killing of a young boy in a quiet town. The evidence all points to one man, the local teacher and baseball coach Terry Maitland, played by Jason Bateman. There are witnesses, fingerprints, even video footage. It's an open and shut case, until it isn't. Detective Ralph Anderson, played by Ben Mendelsohn, discovers proof that Terry was in two places at once. one of them the crime scene. From there, the story stops being a police procedural and starts becoming something far stranger. The Outsider is a slow burn horror built on atmosphere and unease. It's grounded in realism, which makes every supernatural crack in the surface feel even more unsettling, and Cynthia Erivo as investigator Holly Gibney gives the show its heart. She is the only one willing to look directly at the impossible. This is the kind of horror that doesn't need to raise its voice. The dread seeps in quietly, through shadows, silences, and the sense that something ancient and unseen is moving just beyond the edge of reason. If you like True Detective but wished it leaned harder into the uncanny, The Outsider is your perfect middle ground, methodical, haunting, and impossible to shake.
Isn't this place amazing?
I do have to tell you about what happened to the last owners.
They didn't die in here, did they?
Yes, actually, murder-suicide.
We'll take it.
Few shows have shaped modern TV horror like American Horror Story. It's outrageous, stylish, and completely unhinged, and that's exactly why it's so much fun to watch. Created by Ryan Murphy and Brad Falchuk, the anthology format means every season tells a different story. Haunted houses, asylums, witches, cults, freak shows, each with its own twisted mythology and tone. The cast is a revolving ensemble of familiar faces, with Jessica Lange, Sarah Paulson, and Evan Peters delivering some of the most iconic performances in the genre. Lange's turns in Murder House and Coven alone are reason enough to watch. Now, not every season hits the same, but when American Horror Story gets it right, it's unforgettable. Asylum is pure psychological dread, claustrophobic, eerie, and brutal. Coven brings witchcraft, sisterhood, and razor-sharp style, and Murder House, the one that started it all, remains one of the best haunted house stories ever told on television. What makes American Horror Story perfect for Halloween is that you can jump in anywhere. Each season is its own nightmare, full of twisted visuals, over-the-top characters, and social commentary that sneaks up between the scares. It's campy, clever, and unapologetically weird, the kind of show where you can laugh, scream, and still feel slightly haunted after the credits roll. If you want horror that's bold, addictive, and just a little bit excessive, American Horror Story is the ultimate Halloween comfort binge, assuming our definition of comfort include ghosts, blood, and existential dread.
It looks like the Ripper.
If American Horror Story is horror turned up to 11, Hannibal is horror played like a symphony. Every note deliberate, every frame composed with unsettling beauty. Created by Brian Fuller, the series takes Thomas Harris's familiar characters, FBI profiler Will Graham, played by Hugh Dancy, and the infamous psychiatrist Dr. Hannibal Lecter, played by Mads Mikkelsen, and turns their relationship into something hypnotic, horrifying, and strangely intimate. Will is a man cursed with empathy. He can step into the minds of killers, but each time it takes more of him. Hannibal, ever the connoisseur, sees that darkness in him and decides to feed it gently, deliberately, like a sculptor shaping clay. What follows is part murder mystery, part psychological duel, and part fever dream. The performances are extraordinary. Dancy brings fragility and torment to Will, while Mikkelsen makes Hannibal elegant, precise, and terrifyingly calm. He's not just a monster, he's an aesthete of violence, a man who turns murder into art. Visually, Hannibal is unlike anything else on television. Every scene feels painterly, lush colors, symmetrical framing, and meals so exquisite they make you forget for a moment what they're made of. It's sensory horror, beautiful, perverse, and completely absorbing. This isn't a show built on jump scares, it's about psychological descent, how evil can feel seductive when it's presented as something refined. If you like your horror intelligent, stylish, and just a little bit unsettling in its beauty, Hannibal is a masterpiece, and easily one of the most hauntingly crafted series ever made.
Only in blood do we find the truth.
Some monsters never die, they just wait for a good adaptation, and Dracula from Stephen Moffat and Mark Gatiss is one of the best modern takes on an old nightmare. This limited series reimagines Bram Stoker's classic not by reinventing it entirely, but by peeling it apart, asking what makes Dracula such a compelling figure after more than a century of retellings. Claes Bang plays the Count with perfect balance, seductive, charming, and utterly repulsive when the mask slips. He's not the brooding romantic we've come to expect, but a predator who enjoys every moment of his hunger. The story begins in familiar territory. The isolated castle, the doomed visitor, the slow realization that something ancient and inhuman lurks behind civility. But as it moves forward, it shifts shape, just like its subject, blurring the lines between old-world horror and modern storytelling. Visually, it's lush and gothic, candlelit corridors, blood-red shadows, and the sense that evil can be elegant. But underneath all that atmosphere, Dracula has a sense of wit and irony that keeps it from feeling stale. It knows its own legend and plays with it beautifully. If you're in the mood for something classic yet clever, familiar but freshly disturbing, Dracula is a perfectly contained Halloween binge. 3 episodes, a timeless monster, and more bite than most full seasons of television.
Do you even know what's going on? I woke up today in the hospital, and that's all I know. Things got crazy, and you won't believe the panic.
For more than a decade, The Walking Dead was the face of television horror, and for good reason. It didn't just build a world overrun by the dead, it built a world where the living were often much scarier. The series begins with Rick Grimes, played by Andrew Lincoln, a small-town sheriff who wakes from a coma to find civilization gone. What starts as a survival story quickly becomes something much larger, a portrait of how people rebuild, destroy, and redefine morality when the world collapses around them. The zombies are horrifying, sure, especially in those early seasons when every encounter feels desperate and raw, but over time, the real monsters become human. Those who cling to control, who lose their empathy, who turn survival into something ruthless. That's what makes The Walking Dead so much more than a horror show. It's about community, loss, and the slow erosion of hope, told through shifting alliances and brutal choices. The cast changed often, but each new era brought something different. Rick and Shane's moral conflict, Negan's charisma and cruelty, Carol's transformation from victim to survivor. Through it all, the show's core questions stayed the same. How much of your humanity can you lose before you stop being human? Visually, it's stark and grounded. The landscapes are bleak, the sound design is minimalist, long silences, wind through empty streets, the shuffle of the undead. It's less about jump scares and more about atmosphere, about tension that never really lets up. If you somehow skipped this one because of its sheer length, it's worth revisiting at least those early seasons. At its best, The Walking Dead isn't just horror television, it's a slow, relentless elegy of what it means to stay alive when the world is gone.
He awakened! Very cool, Master. Very scary.
After all that grim survival horror, let's take a breather, or at least try to, because What We Do in the Shadows might be one of the funniest horror shows ever made. Based on Taika Waititi and Jermaine Clement's 2014 film, the series follows a group of ancient vampires trying and failing to live normal lives in Staten Island. Nandor the relentless, Nadia and Laszlo and their energy vampire roommate Colin Robinson all share a house, argue about chores, and accidentally terrorize the neighborhood. On paper, it sounds absurd. In practice, it's genius. What makes What We Do in the Shadows work is that it treats its monsters completely seriously. The vampires are ridiculous, centuries old and still incapable of figuring out modern life, but the show never breaks its own rules. Every joke lands because it's grounded in that deadpan reality. The cast is flawless. Kaivan Novak gives Nandor a kind of endearing cluelessness, Natasha Dimitru and Matt Berry are pure comedic chaos, and Harvey Guillen as Guillermo, their quietly overworked familiar, might be the true heart of the show. Visually, it's a mockumentary, but with a surprising amount of style. Gothic sets, rich costumes, and moments of genuine horror sneak in between the punchlines. It's not scary in the traditional sense, but it understands horror well enough to make fun of it perfectly. If you want something to balance out your Halloween binge, something that lets you laugh with the monsters instead of hiding from them, What We Do in the Shadows is exactly the show you need. And if the terror is horror rooted in history, Channel Zero is horror pulled straight from the collective subconscious, surreal, haunting, and impossible to predict. This anthology series takes inspiration from creepypastas, those viral internet horror stories that spread like whispers online, and turns them into beautifully nightmarish television. Each season tells a new story, with its own world, tone, and mythology, but all share the same dreamlike unease. The first season, Candle Cove, follows a man drawn back to his hometown by memories of a disturbing children's TV show that might never have existed. It's eerie, nostalgic, and quietly tragic. A perfect blend of childhood terror and repressed memory. Then comes No End House, where a mysterious house appears overnight, promising to show visitors their deepest fears and trapping them inside their own minds. It's existential horror disguised as a haunted house story, and it might be the show's most unsettling season. Each entry in Channel Zero feels like a nightmare you half remembered. Strange images, slow pacing, and a sense that something's deeply wrong even when nothing's happening. The direction, the sound, even the color palette all work together to create unease that lingers long after the credits. It's horror that doesn't explain itself, and that's what makes it work. Every season asks you to fill in the blanks, to question what's real and what's imagined. If you're drawn to quiet, psychological horror that plays with memory, identity, and the things we invent to scare ourselves, Channel Zero is one of the best anthology series you've probably never heard of, and one that absolutely deserves a spot on your Halloween watch list.
I think he wants us to pick up where he left off. You know, saving people, hunting things. The family business.
Before prestige horror took over streaming, Supernatural was already doing it, blending monsters, mythology, and heartbreak long before it was cool. The series follows brothers Sam and Dean Winchester, played by Jared Padalecki and Jensen Ackles, as they crisscross the backroads of America in their '67 Chevy Impala, hunting everything that goes bump in the night. Ghosts, demons, angels, and things that don't even have names yet. What starts as a Monster of the Week road trip slowly becomes something much bigger. A story about family, fate, and the impossible weight of destiny. Across its 15 seasons, Supernatural evolves from urban legend horror into a sprawling mythology that touches heaven, hell, and everything in between. What makes it work is the chemistry between Sam and Dean. Their dynamic is the emotional engine of the show. Two brothers constantly trying to save each other even when it means destroying themselves. And as the series grows, the world around them does too. From the angel Castiel to the demon Crowley, every new character adds a new shade of moral grey. Tonally, Supernatural walks a fine line. It can be funny, self-aware, and even absurd one week, and then quietly devastating the next. That unpredictability is part of its magic, and when it decides to be scary, it's still among the best. Dimly lit motels, eerie Americana, and the perfect use of silence before something terrible happens. It's not just a horror show, it's a legacy, the kind that shaped a generation of genre television. If you want something that captures every flavor of horror, folklore, tragedy, and the relentless pull of family, Supernatural is a journey worth taking. It's long, it's emotional, and once it gets under your skin, it never really leaves.
What is this?
He says we're trapped.
Who says?
The man in my head.
Every now and then a horror series slips quietly onto streaming and ends up haunting you long after it's gone. Teacup is one of those shows. Based on Robert McCammon's novel Stinger, this one-season Peacock original unfolds in a small Georgia town that suddenly finds itself completely cut off from the outside world. No phones, no roads in or out, and the growing realization that something out there isn't human. What begins as an ordinary day turns into a slow-motion nightmare where neighbors become strangers and every sound beyond the window could be the start of something worse. At the center is Yvonne Strahovski as Maggie Chenoweth, a local veterinarian trying to keep her family together as reality begins to twist around them. Scott Speedman plays James Chenoweth, her husband, whose calm starts to crack as the town's isolation deepens. They're surrounded by a cast of grounded, believable characters, people who react to the unimaginable with denial, fear, and the kind of tension that makes every whispered conversation feel like a warning. The horror here isn't just in the creature lurking beyond the tree line, it's in the slow unraveling of trust. Teacup builds dread from silence and stillness, from the sense that something vast and inhuman is pressing in on this tiny corner of the world. It's the kind of show that lets paranoia breathe, giving you more chills in a flickering light or a held glance than in any jump scare. Visually and tonally, it's closer to The Mist or Midnight Mass than a standard creature feature, a story about fear, faith, and the human need to explain the unexplainable. And since Peacock cancelled the show after its first season, it stands as a self-contained experience, one eerie, atmospheric ride with no filler, just escalating tension. If you're looking for something that mixes small-town realism with slow-burn cosmic terror, Teacup is an underrated gem that proves the scariest monsters aren't always out there in the dark, sometimes they're sitting right across the table. And there you have it, some of the most haunting, unsettling, and surprisingly emotional series to binge this Halloween. Whether you lean toward gothic horror, psychological dread, or something a little more offbeat, each one of these shows does more than just scare, they linger. And the best part, we're not done yet, because there were too many great ones to fit into a single list. Part 2 drops next week, with even more incredible horror and suspense series you don't want to miss. If you found something new to add to your watch list, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you're first in line when the next part goes live. And as always, feel free to drop your own favorite scary series in the comments. I always love seeing what you're watching. Thanks for spending some time here with me on Watch This Instead, and remember, sleep is optional when there's one more episode.